everyone, my name is AJ, and I haven't come up with a good intro yet. Today, I'll be reimagining the V's for my AU, the bed and breakfast for former baddies. Disclaimer, I'm not trying to fix these designs. I don't think I'm better than the original artists. This AU is just a thought experiment that's purely for fun, so don't take it too seriously and please just have a good time, okay? Cool, let's go. In case you haven't seen the show, the V's are a group of 3 overlords that are in charge of the entertainment district and are going to be the main bad guys of season 2. We haven't seen them do very much in the first season yet, but they're really important characters, so here I am ready to design. I had this idea to make the V's each one leg of the internet, sorta. Velvet is the creator side, Vox is the business side, and Valentino is the open secret evil just under the surface that everyone knows about. That's like the general dynamic I have in mind for these 3. Let's start with Valentino, just to get him out of the way. Valentino is an adult film director who owns many souls, including angel dusts. Very little is known about his past, except that he died in the 1970s. For this particular character, I think he was actually handled pretty darn well, especially compared to all of the other horrendous writing bumbles that have occurred across the entirety of the series. There are a few things that I don't like about the way they wrote him, but that more has to do with pacing and keeping the mood consistent. I think his design is really solid, and I think he serves his purpose well. The only thing I don't like is the way they introduced him. In the first episode he appears in, he seems like he's gonna be another comedic villain, so it's a bit jarring when the next time we see him, he's a serious threat in the worst kind of way. Oh no. I just realized that my least favorite character is also the one with the best executed writing. Why can't you write the nice characters good? Anyway, let's talk visuals. The first change I made is to what type of bug he is. In the original show, Valentino is a moth and Angel Dust is a spider. I would keep this the same if we were exploring the themes of things not being the way they appear, but they didn't really do that in the show, and I don't really plan to do that either. I'm instead going to be going for this idea of ignoring red flags even when they're obvious. Angel Dust is a tarantula, so I needed to pick an animal that preys on tarantulas. With a little bit of advice from my little sister, I eventually landed on the tarantula hawk wasp. Tarantula hawk wasps kill spiders in some pretty terrible ways. Don't look it up if you have a weak stomach. The Wikipedia page was rough, especially if you're imagining the tarantula as a character that you really like. I gave him this really unnatural looking posture. I think it looks kind of off-putting, which I think is absolutely perfect for him. I don't like those redesigns where the artist will just make Valentino look ugly and gross, and then call it a day. I think that's really cowardly to do. Pretty people can be evil too, and pretty people have an easier time getting away with it. It's a part of the show. Valentino uses his looks to manipulate people. It's a huge part of his character that can't be removed without turning him into just another generic creep character from Wattpad what's it called? Webtoon! I remembered! So I didn't give Valentino any objectively ugly features. I wasn't exactly aiming for hot, more just attractive enough for you to understand. I wanted the parts of him that aren't so attractive to be entirely behavior-paced, like his rotten posture. I think he would look way nicer if he would just stand up straight, you know? I kept the coat the same. No changes necessary there. I did change the way it's open though, so it's easier for me personally to draw. I think in the original, the fur was part of him. Since he's not a moth anymore, that's not really the case. Same with the antenna feathers. Those are just part of the hat now. I made his real antenna vaguely heart-shaped, which I really loved, and then it was colors. His 2 biggest sins are lust and greed, which lined up perfectly with the colors I wanted, pink and green. He wouldn't look like a tarantula hawk wasp if he wasn't green, and he wouldn't look like Valentino if he wasn't wearing the obnoxiously bright red coat. I wasn't digging the pink I chose initially, so I pulled up a reference of the Hell of a Boss Valentine's merch and sampled the colors from there, which I liked a lot better. I thought the coat was looking a little plain, so I gave it a light pink gradient, which I thought looked really good. A few finishing details, and he was all done. Next up is Velvet. Velvet is my favorite of the V's. She's got my favorite song in the whole show. Velvet is a fashion designer and is also in charge of the group's social media stuff. She's also credited with the creation of the love potion they sell. The wiki didn't say when she died, only that she's the youngest of the overlords. There was more information about her on the Journey to the Light wiki, but I have no idea how canon that thing is. I think that wiki is about a comic or something else that happened, so I'm just not going to use that as part of my research. I thought it would be cool and silly and fun to have her be from the 2010s. The 2010s was when the internet was still newish, and I didn't have depression yet, so I look back on that era fondly. It was the Wild West out there on YouTube. It was an era of everything goes, both for better and for worse. It was the years before we found out that everything sucked and no one can be trusted. Velvet was heavily inspired by the stuff that was popular amongst tween girls when I was a kid. Rainbow Vomit, Lisa Frank, Hyperpop, Overly Edgy, Sparkle Dogs, that kind of thing. But especially Sparkle Dogs and Hyperpop. Hyperpop is a genre of music that is incredibly stimulating. It's maximalism, but for music. It's really loud, and it's hard to describe. For people who don't like it, it kind of just sounds like stressful noise. I don't really like this particular genre of music, usually, but I have heard a few songs from it that I really like. I think I liked it better when I was about 12 years old, before I developed really bad sensitivity issues to noise. When you Google Hyperpop, you'll get a lot of images like the one in the top right-hand corner. A ton of color, a ton of patterns, and just in general, way too much going on. That's the vibe I wanted for Velvet. Included in my inspiration sheet was also Sparkle Dogs. A Sparkle Dog is a specific genre of furry where it'll usually be an animal like a dog or wolf or something vaguely canine-ish that looks like a rainbow threw up on them. Overly edgy furries were also super popular when I was a kid, so I combined Sparkle Dog with all the edge, and that was what I wanted. I actually never made any OCs like this when I was a kid. Even when I was a blossoming artist, a ton of detail has just never really been my style, so it was a challenge for me. Make me an emo girl with everything on it, but also make it animator friendly? And also design multiple outfits, because Velvet has multiple outfits. I'll be honest, guys, I struggled. This one took so much time. I wasn't in love with the hair for the first design, so I snipped off the head and tried again, this time with the ponytails. Her hairstyle also changes throughout the show, so that's fun for me. How on earth do I keep this girl looking like herself like this? Anyway, I really liked her original outfit the way it was, so I kept it the same but cropped the jacket in half so there's no, coattails stuff going on. I added a collar and wristbands, cause edgy, and also made her ponytail holder things spiked also. I gave her paws for feet, cause cute. And that's my design process, really, just anything I wanted to draw. In the alternate outfit, I gave her one ponytail. I ended up hating the outfit itself, so don't worry, that goes away and it'll get fixed. Colors were the hardest part for me. I have never worked with a rainbow color palette, ever. I tried sampling from my inspiration images, but I wasn't loving it, so I decided to use all neons. I have never worked with neon colors before. It was rough. I knew what I wanted to do vaguely with all the neutral colors, so I started there. I decided to make her hair white to make it easier to balance all the colors with a black underside. I knew that I wanted her pants to be striped, and I also wanted to give her striped sleeves and tights, or just make her arms striped. I went with the stripes or just what she looks like. White is all of the colors of light combined, and black is all of the colors of paint combined, so it's even when the colors are neutral, it's still all of the colors all of the time. Now, for the rainbow. I experimented to see whether stripes or a gradient was faster to draw. The gradient ended up being easier and faster, so I decided on that. I put the rainbow gradient on the lower sections of her hair, her antenna tails, and her teeth. A few finishing details and she was all done. Last one is our favorite TV boy. Let me tell you, I struggled again. I really like Fox's design except for his dumb hat, so making any sort of change was really difficult to do. I had to give him multiple passes just because I just hated my first draft so much. In the first draft, I tried to make him more robotic, but I didn't have any ideas outside of give him blade prosthetic legs. I hated it. I'm not trying to fix these characters. I want to make them different, and I want to make them different a lot, otherwise it feels like fixing. I didn't want to just remove his hat and give him blade legs and call it a day. That's lame. So after fighting with that for way too long, I opened up a new drawing file and started over. In my second pass, I started with just a shape. In the show, we know from a few pictures that were in the background that Vox used to be an old-fashioned TV. I had this idea that he still is that old-fashioned TV, but he's plugged into a new monitor. So he can constantly improve himself, but his true soul is in that old-fashioned television. For the rest of his body, I made him into cord-like tentacles. The only two pieces of clothing our boy gets are sleeves and a bow tie. Nothing else will fit on him, except for the hat. But I hate the hat! No hat! The hat? No! Just like with Velvet and Valentino, when you go onto Vox's wiki, there is no information about what his life before was like. There's so little information about him just in general at all. But that didn't mean I had no ideas. In the song Stayed Gone, there's a part where Vox dresses up like a priest. This made me think, what if before he died he was a televangelist? I'm sure there are some absolutely wonderful televangelists that are out there spreading the word of God because they want to, but let's not pretend that there aren't a few out there that are buying private jets they don't need with the tithes of the faithful. That's what my version of Vox did. So his sins are going to be greed and sloth. Greed because he was embezzling tithing, and sloth because he doesn't want to do any real work. All scammers are lazy. Get a real job! So it was with a heavy heart, I changed his dark purple to be dark blue, and made most of his accents green, because the purple would be envy, and, let's just keep it simple. The only red I left in there is the eye he uses to hypnotize people. It wouldn't look like Vox with at least one red eye. Besides that, all sins come from pride one way or another, so yeah, I'm perfectly justified in using red in every single design. Now, if you've been paying close attention, you will have noticed that all of the Vs have a few physical characteristics in common. They all have elbow spikes, they all have freckles, and they all have black and white stripes, and they all have that heart-shaped antenna somewhere. In my previous videos, I've mentioned that in my AU, when a demon owns a sinner's soul, their body will gain one of their physical characteristics. For example, all of Alistair's souls have skull faces. I thought it would be a fun idea if all of the Vs mutually owned each other. I think what happened was they were signing what was supposed to be regular business contracts, but all of them snuck soul owning into the fine print, but didn't realize that the others had done that too. So now they're married. True marriage belongs to heaven, so I think that the hell equivalent would be mutual soul owning. So yeah, they accidentally hell married each other and now they're stuck. I think they would both love and kind of hate each other in a weird, strange, toxic way. Like I said earlier, it's kind of like the dynamic of the three parts of the internet. The business side needs creators to stay relevant and keep making money. The creator side needs businesses to make enough money to fund their creative projects. Though neither need the grossest parts of the internet, and it's really bad for their image to get caught interacting with it, they both have so much to gain from keeping it around. That's the general dynamic. They need each other, but at the same time, they don't get along at all. I think it's also an interesting dynamic that Velvet has the greatest variety of sins, Vox's sins have lasting effects on the most people, and Valentino's are the most severe. I think Vox, having been a televangelist, even though he's just a tech CEO now, will give him a really interesting dynamic with Alistair. In my AU, Alistair has a lot of trauma associated with religion and specifically went out of his way to kill a bunch of priests and nuns. In my AU, the reason why Alistair chose not to join the Vs and then became a full-on enemy was because he found out that Vox used to be a televangelist of the worst kind. So Alistair had a bit of a silly moment and tried to murder him for that. So now they both have reasons to hate each other. I have no idea why Vox is so obsessed with Alistair. I'm sure there's something that we'll find out later in the actual show, so I'll have to save that rewrite for later. But I do love the idea of Alistair going out of his way to spite him while at the same time acting like he doesn't care or is completely oblivious. For changes I'm going to make to Velvet, I want to make her more of a mean girl type. Like, she's still the same jerk she is in the show, but more passive-aggressive than outright mean. Unless she's talking to the souls she owns. She does not hold anything back for them, which I think also includes Vox and Val. But if there's a chance that doing or saying something to somebody will make their public image really bad, she'll play the part of well-meaning ditz. So that would be something I would kind of change for when she interacts with what's-her-face? Carmilla. I think we don't want to burn that bridge completely first meeting. I think I would also be interested if she was interested in winning Vox's approval. A lot of content creators' biggest dreams are to someday be partnered with big companies. Big companies, on the other hand, are always looking for something new that the public will love. So I think Velvet would care a heck of a lot more about Vox than he does about her, while at the same time she pretends like she doesn't care as much as she does, but only when there are other people around. As far as her backstory goes, she was definitely a content creator when she was alive, whose life got tragically cut short for reasons I haven't decided yet. But, yeah, she was one of those content creators that was real bad. Probably one of those ones that catered to kids, but, like, not in a super appropriate way. And then got found out for doing something pretty terrible, and then got canceled. She's one of those ones, which is kind of all content creators these days, except for Markiplier. Markiplier, you better not do anything. I think the story will be told much more effectively if the first time we see him is through Angel's eyes. In My AU, Angel doesn't start the story under Val's control. Instead, he's going to leave the bed and breakfast at the end of season 1. We could see Val for the first time when he introduces himself to Angel at the bar and then leaves the series off on a cliffhanger. I want to spend an entire episode dedicated to how Angel's relationship with Val started and how it progressed into what it became. Then after that, we can see Val through the eyes of other people who aren't scared of him. I think it's perfectly okay to depict abusers as people, because that's what they are, whether we like it or not. At this point in the conversation, I don't think it's helpful to depict abusers as one-dimensional evil people. It's a perfectly serviceable way to tell a story, but I think we can do better. If they were like that in real life, we would have gotten rid of them already. Real-life abusers are often very charming, or people don't take them seriously at all. Usually the worse an abuser is, the better they are at being really charming. The better they are at hiding it. Take Andrew Tate, for example. Although he's not really the greatest example because everybody knows he's awful. But just bear with me. On the outside, you can either see him as a charming person, or you can see him as a total dweeb. The correct answer is dweeb, by the way. But on the inside, when you can't get away from him, then it's scary. Multiple things can be true at once, and I think the choice to depict Valentino as a total dweeb from the perspectives on the people from the outside is both okay and accurate. The problem I have with it is you first meet him as a dweeb. So instead, I want you to meet him the same way Angel meets him. When you first meet him, you're going to think he's charming and romantic, and maybe you'll ignore some red flags because he's pretty or says the right thing. But then you get to the point where you can't leave, and then it's not funny anymore. Now he's scary. But once you're on the outside and he doesn't have any power over you anymore, you can see him for what he is. An insecure dweeb who would be nothing without your hard work. As far as writing the V's for My AU, how that's gonna go, I think I need to wait until season 2 of Hazbin Hotel drops for me to really know what to do with them, because they're not super active in season 1. Like, they're still important and they still do a lot of stuff, but there's just not a whole lot to work with quite yet, which is unfortunate. I'm very excited to see what they're gonna do next, though. Yeah, so for the time being, they're gonna be pretty minor characters. They're kind of just there. Not a whole lot I could do to fix that. I think if I were writing the show myself, if I were trying to fix Hazbin Hotel, I would probably save the V's entirely for later and introduce them in season 2. But I'm not writing the show, and I have no idea where the story's going, so not a whole lot I can do about that. So, I'll do the best with what I've got. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons Mercer Scott Holt, JRDS, and J Draws. If you'd like to support me, check out my Patreon. I also take commissions. Here are my prices. You can order one on Ko-fi, Instagram, or Discord. I also have my AO3 account linked. There's a little fanfic in there that you might like that I write sometimes when my brain is fried. If none of that catches your interest, that's alright. I'll still see you again next week in a super cool video where a big lizard meets a mysterious cloaked figure.